Hello and welcome to the complete Europa Universalis IV guide for beginners. My name is Ludiet Historia and Paradox has tasked me with making a real map gamer out of you. This is the first in a series of guides for Europa Universalis IV where we will go from the basics to progressively more advanced mechanics, explaining how they work and how you can use them to become a better player. We will only be using the base game in today's video with no DLCs activated. Fundamentally, when playing Europa Universalis IV, your goal is to grow your nation to become a dominant world power. To do this, you have various resources at your disposal. Whilst we'll go into the various resources and what they do later, it is important to understand that your aim as a player is to improve these resource pools through conquest, technological and ideological advances, and by, importantly, accumulating various national modifiers. Imagining your nation as a finely crafted set of skills that you will be attempting to balance with resources and modifiers is a key starting point and will make digesting the game's nuances far easier down the line. To start it off, we'll be clicking on Single Player, the map of the world in 1444 in all its glory. The great part about EU4 is that you can literally play as any nation you'd like in any year between 1444 and 1821, which is the time frame within which our game operates. You can see various important bookmarks to the top left of the screen. From the very first 1444 bookmark, you can scroll down and see all the starting bookmarks highlighted, such as the American Civil War. But the great part is that if you like to play a random date, you can of course manually click each month and year to reach the start date that your heart desires. Take note though, it is recommended to start in 1444 for the most complete Europa Universalis IV experience, as this is where the fun begins. You can also click on the Save Game tab to continue older saves you might have begun and haven't finished. If you've purchased DLCs that accompany the game, you will have an icon for each of them to the right of the bookmark screen, and if you click each, it will tell you what these DLCs add and which DLCs are recommended alongside it, as well as what nations are recommended to play if you've purchased that particular DLC, as it has given specific flavor to said nations. At the bottom left, you have the options. Here's where you can change the difficulty of your game, as well as the starting parameters of your game world. You'll note at the bottom of the screen, we also have some recommended nations to play as. These are either very interesting starts or easier nations to start as. As a beginner, it's better to start as the bigger, stronger nations such as the Ottoman Empire, France, Muscovy, or Portugal, all of which are very difficult to lose as since you have a strong economy and a large army. When you click a nation, you will have some important information to take note of. At the top right, we see the rank of the nation, which ranges between duchy, kingdom, and empire. We also have the technology group, which determines what type of units that nation will have available, the flag, and the religion it adheres to. We see the unique title of the nation, if it is an independent nation or a subject of another nation, and we also have the starting skills of the leader of the nation, which is divided between administrative, diplomatic, and military skills, each influencing different parts of your game. As you would imagine, the higher the skills, the better. You can see the starting technology of the nation from all three branches. All nations within Europe, Asia, and North Africa start at technology level 3, but most American nations, certain African nations, and most of Oceania will start at tech 1 or 2. Each nation has their own national ideas which give various benefits within the game that we'll go into later, and you can see how many starting provinces the nation has, the overall development of those provinces, and the amount of fortification. Development determines how much income and soldiers you can field, so provinces with higher development are more desirable. In the case of the Ottomans, we have 320 development within 41 provinces, so that's less than 10 development per province, whilst as Florence, we only have 3 provinces with 57 overall development, so almost 20 development per province. That means that Florence will start with a decent economy and would be able to field quite a few units despite its smaller size, but the Ottomans would still win a war as their development as a country is still little higher. In the diplomacy tab, you can see what our starting situation is, and this is unique to each nation. The Ottomans have a truce at the start to show the peace with the crusading nations, and a guarantee of peace of Ragusa, which means the Ottomans will be called into war to defend Ragusa should anyone attack them. Once you have selected your nation and you click to play, you will have the option of playing in a normal mode or Iron Man mode. The difference is that only in Iron Man mode you can get achievements, but you also cannot save whenever you want, meaning that if something goes wrong, you can't just reload an older save. You have to fix your situation or restart from 1444. If you're new to the game, I recommend not playing Iron Man until you've gotten more accustomed to the game mechanics. And now that we've actually started the game, it's time to make the Ottomans the superpower they were historically. In Europa Universalis IV, a nation's power is extrapolated into various resource pools that you as a player can spend and generate throughout the game to guide your nation. These resource pools are located at the top of the game screen. We have our treasury, where we can see how much money we currently have in it, as well as how much we are gaining monthly if we hover over it. The second tab is our manpower, which includes the max manpower as well as how much we gain monthly. Manpower is one of the most important modifiers, as without manpower, you cannot field an army, you cannot reinforce units, so you might end up losing wars if you don't have manpower and no ducats to hire mercenaries. Sailors is the same as manpower, but they're used for ships as well as marine regiments. Stability is how stable your nation is. Corruption is a negative modifier that we want to keep as close to zero as possible, since it increases all power costs, autonomy, and has other negative modifiers. That means if you have 5 corruption, you will spend 5% more administrative, diplomatic, and military power on any interaction that requires power. Corruption is increased by having overextension, lack of religious unity, and having unbalanced research. It can be decreased by being ahead of time with your diplomatic and administrative technologies, having high stability, or just spending ducats to lower your corruption from the economy tab. Prestige affects a lot of things. A positive prestige will give great modifiers such as morale of armies and navies and aggressive expansion impact. Legitimacy is how legitimate your ruler is seen by its people. You want to have this as close to 100 as possible at all times. Bad legitimacy gives horrible modifiers, whilst good legitimacy increases your diplomatic reputation and lowers your unrest, meaning you will get less rebellions. Power projection is how powerful your nation is. It is important to have this above 50 at all times if possible. If you have it above 25, you get an extra general and admiral without upkeep, and at 50 or above, you get 1 more power for each of the categories. Aside from that, having it at 100 means you get 10% more morale of armies and navies, which can make the difference between winning or losing a battle. We also have 3 types of monarch power. We have administrative, diplomatic, and military power. Each of them influence a certain aspect of your nation and allow you to advance by using your monarch power. You will require it to advance in technology, where administrative, diplomatic, and military power each affects their respective technology. Similarly, unlocking ideas will require power once more for each idea that you unlock from every idea group. Administrative power can also be used to reduce inflation, increase your stability, core newly conquered provinces, whilst your diplomatic power can be used to reduce your war exhaustion, which you gain from having your provinces occupied or being in a war for too long, and which in turn gives you some very negative modifiers that make it more difficult to expand, increase your rebels, decrease your manpower recovery speed, and even your economy. You also can use military power to recruit generals and diplomatic power to recruit admirals. You have the ability to demote and promote cultures with your diplomatic power. Accepted cultures provide no penalties, whilst unaccepted cultures will be more difficult to convert, and they will provide less tax, manpower, and sailors alongside be more rebellious. And you can use your various monarch power to increase your base tax, production, or manpower in provinces, which in turn gives specific bonuses to these particular provinces that have seen their development increased. So as you can imagine, your monarch power is one of the more important resource alongside your manpower and ducats. We also have our merchants, colonists, diplomats, and missionaries. Each of them fulfill vital roles in your nation and will be used to collect trade or divert it in the case of merchants, colonize new provinces for colonists, do pretty much every diplomatic action for diplomats, or convert provinces to your religion for missionaries. If you press F1 on your keyboard or click the flag at the top left of the screen, you get the country view tabs open. There's 14 tabs, and this is where you manage every aspect of your country from. Knowing how to best manage these tabs will lead to your inevitable success in Europa Universalis IV. The first tab is your court tab, and this is where your current ruling leader is, his heir and consort, as well as your 3 advisors and the overall power generation. The type of leader your nation has is defined by your government type, as well as how they come to and remain in power, but for now we'll focus on monarchies for the purpose of this tutorial. When your leader dies, your heir becomes the new leader. If your leader dies and your heir is not yet of age, then your consort will act as regent until the heir comes of age. If there is no consort, then a regency council will be formed and will be in power until the heir comes of age. Your advisors are the backbone of your nation. They generate additional power for each of the 3 categories, from 1 to 5 additional power based on their skill level, but they also give unique bonuses depending on the type of profession that the advisor has. Take note, the higher skill level, the more expensive your advisor will be, so make sure that you hire someone that your treasury can sustain. You should avoid hiring any advisors if your economy cannot sustain it. If you hover over your power, you'll get a breakdown of where it's coming from. You get 3 power by default, then your leader's skills add up to it, and you can also focus on one particular power, such as administrative in the case of the Ottomans, which takes 1 power from the other 2 categories each and gives 2 power to the category focused on. Switching over to the second tab, the government tab, this is where you can see your government rank, accepted and non-accepted cultures. Third tab is the diplomacy tab, and this is one of the most important aspects of the game, as conducting successful diplomacy can really change your game. From the beginning, you can see which nations have rivaled you, as they are marked as enemies, so you can return the favor and rival them back, or you can ignore and rival other nations you have an interest in attacking in the near future. The next tab is the economy tab, where you can see what your income and your expenses are. You can also take loans in case you go in a deficit and debase your currency, or raise war taxes when at war, making your units cheaper to maintain at the cost of 2 military power each month. The amount of loans you can take varies on how stable your country is, and the size of the loans also varies on how strong your economy is. The trade tab shows how much income you have from trade flowing in your trade nodes, and the technology tab, what your current technology level is. Technology unlocks new buildings, more advanced types of units, new mechanics, and increases certain modifiers that help your country in various ways, such as increasing your trade range, increasing how much morale your soldiers have, or your production efficiency. You can hover over each tooltip in the technology tab to learn more about what you get unlocked with better technologies. Throughout Europa Universalis IV, you'll be spending your monarch points to increase your technology, but it will be a constant balancing act as to when you spend your points on advancing, as going too far or falling too behind the flow of history may have adverse effects or positive boons on your nation. You can see by the percentage sign next to the technology level how far ahead or behind times you are, and hover over the icon to see the cost to advance in technology. The ideas tab is where you see your country's ideas, such as in our case the unique Ottoman ideas. At certain administrative technology levels, you will unlock new ideas that will shape the path our country goes down as we progress in the campaign. The missions tab is where we can try and complete missions that our country might have available. There's generic missions as well as unique missions that certain countries have. You can unlock more missions by acquiring DLCs, as most come with missions for various nations. Decisions and policies is where you can enact decisions that grant certain modifiers and choose policies, which we'll get into more in the intermediate video. Some decisions are unique, such as adopt the title of Khalifa is available to us as a Muslim nation, and expanded Devshirme system is available since you're playing as the Ottomans. Stability and expansion is where we can see how stable our nation is. You can increase stability by spending administrative power, and this will have a different cost based on various modifiers such as religious unity in our case. Disasters are also shown in this tab, and you can see what can potentially cause these disasters by hovering over them. It is best to avoid triggering any disasters as they're usually hard to get out of. The religion tab shows your current religion, and each religion has their own unique mechanics. As the Muslims, we can choose between adhering to legalism or mysticism, each coming with its own benefits and debuffs. You can also convert provinces from this tab. There is a monthly cost to converting provinces, and the time it takes to convert depends on the missionary strength. There's various ways of increasing your missionary strength, such as hiring an advisor, which would make converting provinces significantly faster. The military tab is where you can see your current units as well as information on your army strength, your generals, and naval units. You can change your units when you have unlocked newer units from getting better technology, and you can hire new generals, which might get better fire, shock maneuver, or siege values. The higher these values, the better the army your general commands will perform. Your army tradition determines how good your generals can be when hired. Your subjects tab is where you can manage your subjects and interact with them. And last but definitely not least, the estates tab is where you shape your country's internal works to the core. You start with 3 main estates: the nobility, the burghers, and the clergy. You can give various privileges to these estates and get modifiers from the privileges, but it does come at a cost. Your country has an estate land distribution. The white part is the land owned by the crown. That's you. The red is the nobility, the blue is the burghers, and the yellow for the clergy. More land owned by the various estates and less owned by the crown leads to negative modifiers, whilst the opposite leads to more good modifiers because you own more land directly. We can increase our crown lands by seizing land from the estates, which can upset them and cause them to revolt, or by developing land. Each time we develop a province, we increase our crown lands by 0.2, but remember that developing costs power, and everything in our country costs power, so it's a delicate balance to maintain. If we want to conduct diplomacy with any nation on the map, we just have to right click on that nation. There's multiple diplomatic actions we can take, from a declaration of war to an alliance or a royal marriage. In order to declare war, we must have a casus belli, or a reason for war. We could attack without a reason, which is a war of aggression, but that would give us -2 stability and 2 war exhaustion, which is not ideal as we want to have a stable country. There's a few ways to get a casus belli, such as building a spy network and then fabricating a claim with it, or we can even get claims from our national missions as certain nations that have unique missions by completing the requirements to that mission. You build a spy network with your diplomats by right-clicking on the target nation, going to covert options, and build spy network. Once the network is established, the bigger the network gets, the more actions we unlock, each with their own cost, and some locked behind higher diplomatic technology. Also take note, a diplomat cannot be used for any other actions whilst he is building a spy network. Whilst we're getting our claim on Byzantium, we will be recruiting more units. You can press B on your keyboard or click the icon at the top left of the screen to open the production interface or macro builder. Here you have access to actions such as recruiting units, which we'll be doing right now. You can also recruit mercenaries, ships from the naval tab, and even build buildings or develop your provinces, as well as other interactions you might need to do as you progress in the campaign. For developing, this is my preferred tab to use, as you can filter by cost, and generally speaking, the cheaper it is to develop a province, the better. This of course depends on the goods the province has. For example, you want to increase production development on high cost trade goods such as paper, and you want more manpower in grain, fish, livestock, and wine provinces, as later when you build your soldier's household, having that manufacturing building in provinces with the said goods will double the manpower offered by the building. It's time we also get some allies. We can right click on nations around us to see who would be interested in being our friends. In general, general, we want to get nations that can become our subjects as allies that eventually we can subjugate diplomatically, or big nations that are further away, such as Tunis, from our expansion path, and we can use them to fight other strong nations in between us. Remember that you have a limited amount of diplomatic relation slots, and getting allies, having subjects, guaranteeing nations, and even having royal marriages will take up a diplo relation slot, so use them wisely, since going over the limit will incur a monthly diplomatic power cost. A good example of an alliance is with the French against the Austrians. A nation that has a friendly attitude towards you is very easy to turn into an ally, but if they're neutral, you can always just improve relations with them. There are other ways to increase relations, such as a royal marriage, granting them military access, sending a gift. Take note, having a royal marriage with the nation does take up a diplo slot, as I mentioned earlier, but it also costs 1 stability if you break a royal marriage, so make sure you really need that royal marriage before you send the offer. We have enough spy network to get the claim on Byzantium, or better yet, on the city of Constantinople itself. That means that we have a new casus belli, the conquest casus belli. We are ready to declare the war on the last vestiges of the Roman Empire, confirm, and it is off the war. Make sure that you have your generals assigned to your armies, and we'll be attacking the Byzantines as they're weaker than us, and it should be a fairly easy fight. Our armies might be bigger than the Byzantines, but the way that combat works in Europa Universalis IV, it is more than just the size of your army. You have a base morale value, which determines how long an army can stay in the fight. When your army's morale goes to 0, it will retreat, regardless of it being bigger than the army it's fighting. Make sure you have your army maintenance slider to maximum, as this determines how much morale your units will have. Other important values to keep in mind for your armies are discipline, which determines how much damage the army can inflict, as well as how much damage it takes. The dice rolls you have when in combat will also determine how much more morale damage and casualties are inflicted. The dice can be rolled between 0 and 9. It is random the amount of dice that you get, but there are certain ways to improve this that we'll talk more about in the more advanced guide for Europa Universalis IV. This is used as a way of showing how in real life, battles are not necessarily about who's got the bigger or the better guns, but also about tactics, luck, and the fighting spirit of your men. After the battle is over, you can see your losses and the enemy losses, as well as how much army tradition, prestige, and war exhaustion each side gains from the battle. You do get more army tradition from losing battles than you do from winning. At the bottom of the interface, you also have the increase in war score. If we click on the war screen, we see that each battle, siege, or occupation increases or decreases the war score. Gaining the war target, in our case Constantinople, would eventually tick up to plus 25 increase in war score after having held the war goal for a long enough period of time, or it has the opposite effect. If we don't hold the war target, we lose 25 war score until we have gained the war target. Once we've crushed the enemy armies, occupied their lands, and we've gained a satisfactory enough war score, we can enforce our peace deal. In our case, we have 100% war score, and we want all of their lands, so we will fully annex all provinces the Byzantines have. You could of course go for other peace deals. You could release nations from their provinces, cancel whatever diplomatic treaties they might have with other nations, or you could even just make them your subject or make them give you war reparations. There are a plentiful of options. It really depends on what exactly your goal is. In our case, it is complete destruction, so we just gained a major victory over the remnants of the Roman Empire. Having annexed these provinces did give us aggressive expansion. If we hover over adjacent nations, we see that they have minus 42 opinion of Ottoman aggressive expansion. Aggressive expansion is a mechanic that limits how much you can expand. If you have above 50 aggressive expansion with other nations, they can join a coalition against you and declare a punitive war, forcing you to release nations that you've conquered and gains that you've made. It is imperative that you avoid getting above 50 aggressive expansion with nations you don't feel confident winning a war against, and you can access your aggressive expansion expansion map mode from going to the diplomatic map modes and then clicking coalition, followed up by just hovering over nations around to see how much aggressive expansion you've accrued. What makes these coalitions extremely dangerous is also that even enemy nations such as Burgundy and Austria, which could be rival to one another, would both join a coalition against you and fight as allies in a war against you. Now that we've taken the provinces from Byzantium, we have to also core them. We could individually go to each province and do so, or we can go to the top of the screen. We have the core icon, click on that. It takes us to the stability and expansion screen where we can manage our overextension and individually core each province we like to core. Obviously core all of them if possible. It will cost you administrative power to core every single province you've taken from the Byzantines. Non-core provinces give overextension, which has multiple negative modifiers. Take note before we core Constantinople, the Ottomans have unique flavor where you can actually make Constantinople the capital of the Ottoman Empire. Thus, we get one stability, we get a core on Constantinople, change it to our religion, to our culture, and even increase our government rank to empire. So we do not need to core the province of Constantinople. It automatically becomes a core. This is only available to the Ottomans when it comes to the province of Constantinople, of course. It also has changed our capital from the province of Edirne to Constantinople, an interaction that would otherwise cost us, again, administrative power to do without that decision. We also can fulfill our first mission, the City of the World's Desire, that gives permanent claims on provinces around us. We can go to the diplomatic map mode or press Y on the keyboard and we can see what exactly we got claims on. Namely, we got claims on Arta, Cephalonia, as well as the provinces in the south. Now, since we've already started coring these provinces, it has taken up our administrative power. However, if you have a permanent claim on a province, it will be 25% cheaper to core that province, and if you have a regular non-permanent claim, it is 10% cheaper. So what we could do now is we can cancel the cores as we've paid a little bit more than we should have, and as you can see, instead of 30, it is only 22 to core this province now. That means that we can actually core for a lot less admin power, leading to us being able to core the last province in just 2 months once we've gotten above 50 administrative power again. We can continue our expansion by attacking Epirus next, since we do have those permanent claims on the provinces of Epirus. If we manage to break the walls when we siege a province, we have the ability to assault that particular province. It does cost 5 military power, but it can be worth it, especially if you have a large army stationed on that province. It basically means we can take the province for ourselves significantly faster, not have to wait for the entire siege to finish. After we've conquered Epirus, we have more missions available. The conquest of Greece gives us claims on the Venetian holdings in the Balkans, as well as on the entirety of Serbia. It is, generally speaking, a good idea to follow whatever missions you might have if the nation you're playing has unique missions. Now that you've grasped the basics of Europa Universalis IV, it's time to venture out and explore the game on your own. The best way to learn it is honestly by just playing it. If you're keen to gain a more in-depth understanding at an intermediate level, our next video will guide you through the details. Once again, my name is Ludiet Historia. I make Europa Universalis IV videos, and click this video if you'd like to learn more.